All right, so here we go. In this video, we're going to take a look at the Oregon country, Oregon Trail. We'll also take a small look at missionaries and women as they settled along this area. America's claim to this Oregon territory goes back pretty much to the Lewis and Clark expedition when we looked at the Louisiana Purchase video, who made it all the way out here. For a while, there were 4 countries that laid claim to the Oregon territory. There were the Americans, the British, the Spanish, and the Russians. The Spanish and the Russians drop out, which just leaves the Americans and the British laying claim to the Oregon country. Now, initially the Oregon country stretches way up into this territory here. And the Americans and the British, they agree to a peaceful joint occupation of the territory. Until this man, James K. Polk, comes along. James K. Polk, you see, was running for president. He was a firm believer in manifest destiny, the idea that the United States would stretch from sea to shining sea. His mission was to expand America across the continent, right? Right before he becomes president, we see Texas comes into the Union, we annex Texas. While he's president, the Mexican-American War happens, and as the Mexican-American War is going on, he sets his sights on Oregon. You see, as Polk is campaigning for president, he kind of develops a couple of slogans. One of his slogans is 54-40 or fight, referring to the line of latitude, 54 degrees, 40 minutes north latitude, saying we are going to own all of the Oregon territory, or none of it. And in fact, that's another one of his slogans, all of Oregon or none. And so he campaigns on these slogans and gets elected, and of course, he instantly sets his sights on the Oregon territory. However, Polk realizes that the British aren't going to just give up the Oregon territory for free, and they're not really willing to part with it. And Polk doesn't want to go to war with the British either. He's got this big talk, 54-40 or fight, all of Oregon or none. But ultimately what happens is the Oregon territory is divided right across the 49th parallel. Right across here, 49 degrees north latitude. They kind of split it in half. The United States actually gets a little bit more of it than the British do. And basically, they just extend a previous treaty line that was made in 1818, which separated the Louisiana territory. So it starts here in Minnesota, where we're at, except for the northwest angle, which kind of, for other reasons, stretches up beyond the 49th parallel just a titch. So we just draw that line all the way out, giving us the Oregon country. Americans are pretty happy with this because we were able to gain the territory peacefully through treaty and settlement with the British. Now comes the point where we explore the territory. We've all played the game, the Oregon Trail. If you haven't played the game, the Oregon Trail, why don't you go ahead right now and actually click on the Oregon country. And there will be a link that will take you out to the Oregon Trail video game. So you can go ahead and you can click that right now. Or actually, you should probably wait and listen to the rest of the lecture, but if you want, go ahead and click it right now. Anyway, back to the lecture. So you got the Oregon Trail. And initially, there are trappers and mountain men, going through the South Pass and making their way up into the Oregon territory. And they come back and they start telling stories. They say that Oregon is a pioneer's paradise. Sunshine all day, trees everywhere, as thick as the hair on a dog's back. They say that there are pigs fully cooked, running around with knives and forks in them, so you can just cut off a slice and eat some. Now, of course, that all wasn't true about the pigs and whatnot, but they say it's a pioneer's paradise, and you got to settle there. The first group of settlers to head into the Oregon territory were missionaries. Now, missionaries, their purpose, kind of their mission, I guess you could say, is to spread their religion. So you have these Christian missionaries, like Eliza Spalding and Marcus and Narcissa Whitman. And, their job was to convert the natives, because remember, there are a lot of Native Americans living in this territory. And the natives are a little upset. I mean, first of all, we claimed the territory and said it's ours now, just like there were Native Americans living in Louisiana. And again, we're like, well, we bought this land, it's our land now. And that's kind of, that darker side of manifest destiny, is that all of this territory, it's already populated by various Native American tribes, but the United States, whether we acquire it through annexation or purchase or war or treaty, we essentially tell those native groups that, hey, you know what, this is our land now, you're just going to kind of have to roll with it and deal with it. We know all about Native American Indian removal to Oklahoma in 1830 with Andrew Jackson and all that. But anyway, back to this here and the missionaries. And so their goal is to spread the religion and convert various Native American tribes to Christianity, particularly the Nez Perce and the Cayuse Indians. However, they're not real successful. They have a hard time converting people to Christianity. And, converting someone to a religion is a difficult thing to do. It's very difficult to get someone to take your beliefs if they already have their own beliefs. So they're not real successful, and they kind of have this tense relationship, to put it mildly. And in fact, the Cayuse Indians, they're very skeptical. They're very unsure of the Whitmans. Because you see what happens is they bring disease with them. Smallpox and things of that nature. Now, the white settlers, the European settlers, the American settlers, were able to handle that. That's a disease, that we have some immunity to. These Native American groups do not. And villages are being wiped out. Native Americans are being wiped out because of these diseases. But the whites, the missionaries, they are surviving. And the Cayuse Indians assume that they are intentionally poisoning them. Now, they weren't intentionally trying to kill off the Native Americans, but that's what was happening. And so in the case of the Cayuse Indians, they actually attack the Whitman mission, killing Marcus and Narciso. So again, not a real happy story, not a real happy ending going on here. But we see that's kind of the Oregon country. We see missionaries spreading west. A lot of settlers, starting to settle in this territory. Women in particular, another group that went along. These trips west were difficult. You would walk. You weren't in covered wagons. You would actually walk alongside the wagons unless you were very little or very old or very sick. So you'd walk, maybe 15 to 20 miles a day. This would be a 3 to 6 month long journey. And the women at the end of the day, their day wasn't done. It wasn't time to sit around the campfire and rest. It was time to cook. It was time to clean. It was time to take care of the children. Some of these women were pregnant. So women, they had a tough job. But women are tough, right? I mean, they are just as capable as men. They're equal to men, and they can do the same things that men can do. And they proved that time and time again on this trip. And it really opened up some eyes, especially of the men that went with them. They watched them be their equals. And so once they made it to the West, they would set up schools, they would set up churches, they would set up libraries, and they really set up this sense of family and community. And that's really their lasting legacy. So yeah, that's kind of a quick overview of the Oregon Trail. Again, we're not getting into a ton of detail here. We know that it was a tough journey. Plenty of people died from sickness and starvation and cold, but we're not going to spend a ton of time getting into a ton of great detail. But there you are, the Oregon country and the Oregon Trail. Feel free at this point to kind of click on over either to the Mexican-American War and the Mexican Cession, the Gadsden Purchase, the Louisiana Purchase, Texas, or Florida.